Okay, another example using the generalized power rule, and again, not too much different in this one, just another one to look at. Again, when we look at these, if pretty quickly, you should be able to notice that it's not something you can apply a rule from 5.1 about. I mean, here we have 3x squared over some square root of this big function, so that's nothing that we even saw remotely a similar problem to in 5.1. So probably need to try the generalized power rule right away. Okay, so how are we going to approach this? Well, probably a couple different things you could do. Maybe the first thing to do is figure out what you're going to call u. Not a bad place to start. And again, I'd say the likely choice is 1 minus x cubed. Okay, it's the best thing to start with because, look, this is the square root of that big function. 3x squared is a little bit simpler, but here we've got a square root of a more complicated thing. So typically when we see a square root with a big expression inside, we take the expression and call that u. Okay. So if that's u, remember that's the only choice we get to make. Okay. We have to figure out what du is going to be as a result. Okay. And remember, du is the derivative of u with respect to x times dx. Okay, what's the derivative of 1 minus x cubed? Well, it's negative 3x squared. So there's my derivative times dx. Okay, so I have to see if I can make this substitution work based on this choice of u. Okay. Well, what can I do? Well, I've got, let's see, I suppose I could write the integral this way, 3x squared dx. You can always put dx in the numerator if you want, if you have a fraction, over the square root of 1 minus x cubed. Okay, so look at that. We're actually really close here. Of course, we can take the denominator and just call that the square root of u. Okay, and here we've got 3x squared dx. Okay, but that's not exactly du. du is negative 3x squared dx. Okay, so we're off. But it's not a problem because we can fix that. We're just off by a factor of negative 1. So I do this little trick here. I multiply by negative 1. Just put a negative sign there. Okay. Okay. But if I do that, I have to multiply by negative 1 again. See, of course, when I multiply by two negative signs, that cancels and I'm back to 3x squared. Okay. But the reason I do this is that now I can factor out this negative 1 that I don't need, okay, and leave the negative sign, the other negative sign, in the numerator. Okay. So what I can write this as is negative 1 times, hey look, that's exactly du. Okay. So I want to have exactly du inside. I want to get rid of all the x's and the dx that are left over and replace it with du. If I'm not exactly there, then I can maybe fix it a little bit by multiplying and dividing by the same number. Okay. So, again, the trick here is, when you want to multiply by something inside, that's fine, as long as you cancel it out by multiplying by the reciprocal somewhere else. Okay. So if you look at this one now, we're in good shape because this is just negative 1 times the integral of, well, that's 1 over the square root of u du, which is negative 1 times the integral of u to the negative 1/2 du. Okay. So look, that's just negative 1, and then I can integrate this using the power rule. Okay. U to the power negative 1/2 du. Okay. When I integrate that, again, according to this rule, I get 1 over the old power plus 1. Okay, that's negative 1/2 plus 1, which is positive 1/2, times u to the power negative 1/2 plus 1, which is positive 1/2, plus c. Okay, so I've got negative 1 is just a negative sign. Okay, 1 over 1/2, that's 2, u to the 1/2 plus c. So I can write this as negative 2 times u to the 1/2 plus c, or if you want, you can write it as negative 2 times the square root of u plus c. Okay. Oh yeah, and one last thing. It's easy to forget this, but you don't leave u in the answer, right? U is this temporary thing that we created to make our life easier and apply a rule of integration. So yeah, what was u? It was, okay, it was 1 minus x cubed. Okay, so you definitely have to go back to that because if somebody looks at this answer, they don't know what u is. It's something you created to solve the problem. So okay, there we go. Negative 2 times the square root of 1 minus x cubed plus c.